Hello. Hello and welcome to the not so bi-weekly Foxhole Devs. Is that joke gonna get old or am I just like aging myself at this point?
I I think it was old like 3 years ago, and
When it was
now
actually
it's
bi-weekly?
it's like a it's like a corpse
Uh,
on the ground that's completely rotted. But
How are y'all doing today? We are here to explain and show some of what we've been working on for update 57. So you know what? Let's not. We're already running a little behind schedule. So Mark, why don't you take it away?
sounds good. Yeah, so like Matt said, we're gonna give you guys a preview of update 57. And just to do a little bit of a recap of where we are and where we're gonna be heading. Um, so what we said last year was that in 2024 we're going to take a break from the large expansion style updates, and we're going to focus on going back to refresh past systems, tie up some loose ends, before we hop back on to the next big thing. So in update 56, the last update, we went back to refresh some of the facilities gameplay, and uh, in this update, we're going to be looking at weather, which is something we haven't looked at for a very long time. I think it's been about 3 years. And then update 59, it's going to be a smaller, more of a maintenance update, where we focus on fixing a lot of bugs as many as we can, and also just taking care of other little balance things and smaller features there. And then in update 59, it will be replacing our usual expansion update. It'll still be an annual update, which means it's a little bit bigger than the other ones, even though it won't be anywhere near the scale of naval warfare or Inferno. And then after that, we got bigger plans coming for 2025. But that stuff, it won't come to fruition until well into next year. But yeah, it's slowly wrapping up to big exciting things. But this year we just gotta um, take care of the uh, take how what do you call it? It's not quite spring cleaning, but it's the equivalent of that spanned out over the entire year. You can say.
Midsummer
But
cleaning?
midsummer cleaning that's just spread out through the whole year. But in any case, I recommend everybody read our latest devlog, which goes over all of this. And yeah, so but for this stream, we're gonna be focusing on 57, which I will get to now. So starting with a list of general improvements that we've made. The first one here, we've done some work on the inventory side. First one here is custom stack splitting. So with the hotkey, you'll be able to split your stack now to a specific amount, and we specifically designed this to require the least amount of mouse clicks as possible. And Max said to me last week, I don't know why it's taken us so many years to get this in the game. And I agree with him, but hey, better late than never. So that's the first one here. The next inventory feature we got here is inventory sorting, and I think this is another thing that's been long overdue. So every inventory now will have a sort button that will automatically clean up your inventory and stack all the items together and put them into a stable ordering. And there is another small part of this, another sub feature of this almost, which is smarter stacking rules here. So when an item is consumed, the smallest stack size will be consumed, which will help keep your inventory clean. And if they're all the same size, I believe it will uh, get the rightmost stack. So overall, this goal is help players manage their inventories and just reduce a little bit of that friction that happens on a moment-to-moment basis when managing your inventory. Immediate resource storage. So resources like gravel, explosive materials, and heavy explosive materials will now be able to be held in resource containers, and all other related containers, including a new vehicle that we will be talking about later. But this is another improvement here. And it also, I think there's also plans. This will help us expand on some of the resource gameplay in the future now that these resources are able to go into these containers. Sniper rifles. So we've come back around with the sniper rifles. I know this is has had a history of has gone to different places. I would say from somewhat useful to more useful to less useful, and we're taking another pass at it. We do know that sniper rifles they had regressed in their usefulness a couple of updates ago. And we wanted to do another pass to make them effective again without making them as overpowered as they used to be. And these are some of the changes that we've made. But what we really hope is that in the dev branch, we will be able to get more feedback from you guys to further tune the sniper rifles. But what we really hoping is to see these back into use again, like they used to be. And yeah, but there's other more detailed information in the release notes that you'll see about each of the sniper rifle variants. But just expect this to be something that has been updated here in update 57. And just rapid firing through a bunch of other small quality of life or small improvements here. Binoculars are going to be usable in more open top seats, including the tankette here. Um, Vehicle passengers can finally access their own inventories. So this is goes along with that group of improvements to player inventory that we've made. Um, Drive wheel. We've updated the visuals of the engines on large ships again, so to allow players to visibly see which direction the engines uh, set are are set to. So you'll be able to just see directly by looking at the engine itself. We've added three new types of map posts: intelligence, logistics, facilities. So adding to the existing types of posts there to give more flexibility and clarity. And this is a really tiny one, but just again, going with our goal here to remove those little bits of friction um, throughout the moment to moment experience. This is when you're demolish a structure, the refunded materials are now placed in a more accessible location there. And then finally, again, this is one of those another place where there's a little bit of friction that we want to get rid of when we're traveling over with a large ship. There's a bunch of actions that currently will cancel the travel, and we've taken a look at that and addressed it so that they will no longer do that, just to make that experience of traveling a bit smoother here. And moving on to the next general improvement is facility husks. So this is exactly what it sounds like. And when a facility is destroyed now, it will retain a husk, much like some of the structures in towns. And really, one of our driving motivations for this was to ensure that when a facility is destroyed at a front, it doesn't just vanish and the enemy can just kind of advance through it. But now we really wanted to provide a potentially more interesting environment for combat, similar to what we see in the towns here. And it's also on top of that, just the general quality of life for those running facilities. When it's destroyed, its contents are immediately lost there. But really, one of our bigger goals was just making sure, trying to find new ways to make the combat environment more interesting. And a small side note to this is that concrete foundations have received a little bit of a buff as well. Um, Moving on to some new player user experience tweaks. So these are just this is not like a revamp of new player experience. There's obviously a lot more work to be done here, but this is just a little refresh of the main menu and the home region. So one thing we've done at the main menu is the first message that players will see. We've updated the message there just to give players a little bit more information about what Foxhole is about, and to help orient them towards the unique gameplay that is here, which might not necessarily be what they'd expect based on playing other games. And then the other thing we've done is we went back to refresh the home regions to add in some missing areas in the training course as the game has evolved over the years. There has been certain features and systems that just weren't weren't introduced back into the home region. So suppression training, firefighting, shooting range, and there's also a new facilities training area as well to hopefully explain some of these mechanics to players that are joining Foxhole for the first time. And there's just a few more things that have changed in the home regions that are not mentioned here. Um, One of the things that we had designed and planned for a while back around 1.0 actually was to do a pass on the option screen. Well, there was a larger set of changes, which was for the main menu, which we did get to some of those changes as a whole in the main menu in terms of updating the visuals. But the option screen was a specific area that we really wanted to refresh because it was largely untouched for a long time. So finally, that redesign has made it into update 57 as part of these sets of changes that we're going back to look at this year. So you can see a screenshot here, and you can also see a screenshot here. We've just unified a lot of the visuals, and hopefully things are more clear and just generally look nicer there. And I think that's it for that section. So let's move on to the next here with the video. All right,
Exciting.
I'm gonna hand the reins over to you, Max, to talk about the weather update.
Weather refresh. Woo! Okay, so one of the main reasons that we were coming back around to weather, those of you who have been with us since we implemented this during Winter Army, um, we implemented a lot of features way back then, and since then we've gone through many iterations of the game. And we've changed the way weather works, and we've even taken out a bunch of stuff as new features conflicted with old designs. So we wanted to come back around and take a look at weather holistically and try to bring it forward to a more modern standard, so that it gets married to more of our systems, to more of our um, uh, more of our mechanics. So there's 3 areas that we identified that primarily we needed to work on, which was obviously the snowstorm, the rainstorm, and wind. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
I think there was also the other part of that as the years have gone by, we've accumulated feedback on certain areas of weather, Max, that I think players had issues with, and we also wanted to take care of some of that as we come back around for this pass.
yeah, definitely.
Great. Yeah. Some of them were listed there, but I guess we'll move on to snowstorms then.
Yeah.
What's new?
So yeah, as you guys saw in the video, lakes and rivers will freeze now. They'll turn to ice. You'll be able to walk on them. You'll be able to damage them, and they will break apart. Uh, the heavier the vehicles are, the more the ice will crack. The faster it'll crack, and hitting them with things like artillery will cause it to break faster. What we hope this will do is create during snowstorms, give you guys more interesting ways to approach a frontline problem, to possibly go around, to try a different vector of attack. Vectors that used to be closed before as a result of like bad or not bad, but difficult landscape challenges such as bridges and bottlenecks. You'll be able to move around and might make them more feasible as possible vectors of attack. The damaged ice will refreeze over time. It won't take too long. So you, even though you can break it apart to break up an attack, it will only be momentary. Momentary. You won't be able to completely halt an attack by completely blasting a river open. And we're making storms in general more common. So this applies to rainstorms and severe snowstorms. Um, our philosophy with these is still that we don't want these to happen all the time. We think that they should be special events that change that are exciting and unique and interesting, not something that you just be dealing with all the time. So when ice forms, it should feel special. But they are more common now than they were in the live game. I think we can move to the next slide. Rainstorm. So I want to do a big caveat here before I even launch into this. There's more rainstorm stuff coming in the future. This was identified as one of the major pain areas with weather. We think in general, snow was more generally well received because it changed the way that people played and people found it interesting. Whereas rainstorms, for those who don't know, if you were caught in a rainstorm, essentially everybody just got muddy. If you're walking on any surface, you just get muddy, and it didn't really change the way you played. It just made it more painful to play. So what we did to address that was rather than getting muddy everywhere, so you no longer get muddy just by walking around. Now we've created these physical puddles that will form dynamically on the ground. They'll also pool up in low areas such as trenches and craters. This will give the player a choice as opposed to being forced upon them. If you want to go through a puddle, it's your choice. You might do that to avoid defenses or to get an advantage, a temporary advantage over an enemy, but it has a long-term consequence of slowly increasing your encumbrance. We've also increased the settle times during rain. This was done because we feel like it just makes sense. It it seems like yeah, it just makes sense. Um, Yeah, and as I said again, I want to reiterate this is that we have more planned, but we didn't get to all of it for right now. The old systems, the old alternate effects like the reduced intelligence is still in the game, but we've also hopefully improved the visuals a little bit so that you guys can so it looks a little bit better.
All right, we'll move on to new weather-related structures.
Yeah. Okay. So the last area that we identified was wind. Uh, when we first implemented our wind with artillery, we applied it to the flags. So some of you veterans would know that if you want to determine the wind in advance of firing an artillery shot, you have to look at the AI flags on the structures, which will point in a direction of the wind. What was probably less known was that those flags also indicated wind speed strength or the wind strength. So how quickly they would whip in the wind would indicate how strong the wind was. But this was so hard to read that most people, we suspect a lot of people didn't even know that this was a mechanic. And most people resorted to just firing one shot and correcting. So we're hoping that with this windsock, that that visual communication will be much more clear. You'll be able to tell more definitively what the orientation and the speed of the wind is just by looking at it. Yeah, and I think it's it would be we're hoping to see uh, players utilize this in training to be able to like help support new players to help show more clearly what the how the wind mechanics are working.
Yeah, I'm really glad we finally got around to do this because when we initially implemented that flag, I think most people on the team felt like it didn't read well, but we just didn't have time to come back and make a dedicated structure like this. So really glad that we finally came back around. Look at that.
All right, the field range. So the campfire that you guys are all familiar with, that's already in the game, it has a tier 2 upgrade now. You can upgrade it to this field range. This will make the structure a little more resilient to artillery fire. Will make it the most critical thing is it's no longer rammable. So if you wanted a fire pit to be a little bit more permanent, you can upgrade it to this field range. So you could build these in the logi towns and expect them not to just get rammed by every passing by truck. Um,
And you
I
know what's
think
funny? Just a side note, the anytime one of these fire pits get rammed, I think of that scene in Home Alone 1 when the pizza truck guy comes and rams the statue. And it just happens like every single time. That's anyways.
that happened to me every time.
Yeah.
You know what we need here? A fire pit.
Yeah, exactly. So
Ram. Yeah, so hopefully this will last a little bit longer. And on the front lines too, during severe snowstorms, there was just a desperate lack of fire pits in combat areas where people could warm up because artillery's going, explosions are going, and it was difficult to maintain or to keep them up. So this will give us that opportunity to or give you guys the opportunity to hopefully get fires a little bit closer to the front line. In addition to that, we added one to the inside of the forts. This works similarly to the ammo room, where you can scroll wheel it around to whichever corner. It will heat up all of the adjacent tiles of the fort, so you can put it in the center and heat up a larger area. We again, the main motivation for this is to try to make it more available and more persistent during like light combat. So you can build this from tier 1 to tier 3 forts.
and this impacts not only the current bunker it's in, but nearby bunker pieces as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, all the adjacent tiles you can
Okay, great.
of the fort pieces.
All right. Let's move on to the last weather structure here.
The weather station. Okay, so this one is this structure is going to allow you guys to help predict the weather. It will require a lot of teamwork. It will require a lot of coordination. You'll be building out weather networks and then connecting those networks together to try to improve your prediction accuracy. There's going to be a bit of teamwork and coordination with trying to decipher the results. I won't get too much into that. You guys can give us the feedback in the dev branch. But the main motivation behind this weather station was that we know there was a lot of feedback from players that uh, they felt like the weather was turning against them with some intention, almost like they some people thought I getting into some crazy conspiracy theories. Some people thought we were literally flying around controlling the weather to change the outcome of the war. And I'm here to tell you with definitive proof that that has never been the case. We have never ever done that. And this weather station, we're hoping will put that argument to rest. We've said it, but people don't believe us. But now, like, you can prove it. Like, you can see
Right.
what's coming, and
So
um,
what you're saying is we worked on an entire feature just to disprove a conspiracy theory. I'm joking.
they wouldn't have believed us until we did it. So.
Well, I think another big, like one of the big things is it's difficult also to plan an operation if a weather event suddenly hits. And I think another reason we wanted this to be here was to help um, alleviate some of those situations. You can plan with more confidence if you set things up correctly, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, I think that's. I do have one more question, and you may have touched on it, but I just want to clarify. So, with the going back to the ice for a second, is it that any vehicle can break the ice? It's just a matter of how fast.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think there might be exceptions to that. I'm not sure about the field weapons, but
Right.
you would be yeah.
And the most important question: does a submarine go under the ice?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and it bursts up through the ice. It's glorious.
Cool. All right, let's just move on to the last small bit of the stream, which is just some minor content for naval. So I've got a video here for this.
I like how we have this video showing like anyway the freighter redesign. Um, so yeah, we recently added physics to the freighter from the previous patch. Um, but we've long wanted to redo the model, not just redoing the physics. So we redid the physics, and there was some concerns about how it maneuvered. And we knew that we wanted to come back and redo the model anyway, so we waited until now. The freighter has gotten a complete overhaul. It no longer, or it looks a little bit more realistic, a little bit more like our other ships, so it's more consistent in the quality. Um, and but other than that, it functions very similar to how it did before. There's a couple of new features. The chassis is a little bit longer. There's a deck that you can actually walk on. There's a spotter seat that lets you see pretty far out, just like similar to our large ships or like our gunboat that has a spotter seat. And there's an extra passenger seat as well, just in case you wanna get up onto the front section. But other than that, the movement characteristics are similar, but we hope will have been improved slightly and balanced. But again, looking for more feedback on the dev branch when you get your hands on it.
Yeah.
But the capacity is still the same amount of things you can move, and it functions the same way.
Yeah, we definitely saw that the movement of the freighter with the current physics was another point of contention after the last update. But I'm really glad we've done this because I think the glaring thing that stood out after naval warfare was how unrealistic the scale and overall feel of the freighter was compared to the other large ships. So um, it's not quite as large as the other ships, but it just makes a little bit more sense now. Whereas before, the scale was completely off after naval warfare. So
Yep. All right, the large resource ship. So the main motivation behind this one was we have there are several classes of resources in our game that all have some method of being transported over sea. There's crates, which can be moved in the storage ship. There's vehicles, which can be moved in the storage ship. And then there's loose items, which can be carried in most of the ships, including the base ship, which is used as like a garrison. But what we were lacking was any way to transport raw resources overseas. So this ship was added to fill in the missing logistical chain. Um, it has two resource stockpiles, so it can carry up to, I think right now it's set to 64,000 of any raw resource. It has a loading area which can store harvesters, so you can kind of use it as like a harvester ship if you want. Um, it's got a spotter seat, of course, and it has a defensive turret. So unlike the freighter, if you're going out to gather resources, you could anchor the ship and be reasonably certain that it's protected from small like raiding parties of gunboat. Yeah.
cool.
We recognize that um, there's probably there's a couple of things that we could imagine this ship being used for. Admittedly, there's not as many things as we'd like, but that's all part of the plan. So we want to look into the future about. We wanted to be able to look into the future and confidently design things that could happen over water that would need something like a resource ship to exist in order for that design to take place. So this is sort of like getting ahead of that. So now we have the tools necessary to sort of expand this part of the game where raw resource transportation is a requirement.
Great. Here's the other render of the resource ship, and I think that wraps up the stream. So couple of quick notes to tie things off. One, the dev branch hits this afternoon, so be on the lookout for that and the full release notes. And in the release notes, there's going to be a lot more changes, obviously, like with regards to game balance, and there's even a bunch of other small improvements that we just couldn't fit into the stream here. So be sure to check out the full release notes for all the details there. Like usual, we're gonna do a dev Q&A on the Reddit, on Foxhole Reddit in the next couple of hours. We'll get that post up, and besides that, I think we're done. We'll see you in the dev branch, and like always, we're the dev branch is when we have the closest eyes and when we can have the tightest loop of communications with you guys. So please, we encourage you to interact with us in the dev branch. Give us your feedback. This is the time. So other than that, we'll be in touch, and yeah, see you in the dev branch. That's it.
All right. Is there anything else? Any other final thoughts, Max?
Nope. I'll be available on the Foxhole Discord and the Reddit QA. So if you guys have any questions about anything on the stream, feel free to pop in there, and I'll be answering questions today.
All right, guys. Well,
Awesome.
Jump in the dev branch and keep your eyes out for the update. And until then, stay foxy.